On the whole, I've been a saint to those poor unfortunate souls.
Hello, and welcome to Poor Unfortunate Podcast. My name is Conor Perkins.
And I'm Caroline Ametti.
And this is the Disney podcast for all of you grown-up Disney fans who are looking for people to shoot the shit about Disney with the way that you do with your friends.
And Conor very brilliantly put it that if a BuzzFeed Disney quiz came to life, it would be this podcast.
This would be it.
If it popped out of the screen and sat on the couch with a microphone, This is what you would hear.
Gave you a big fat kiss on the lips.
Ooh, spicy.
I'm desperate. Okay, I guess a little bit about ourselves. My name is Conor. I already said that. I am an actor, and I live in New York City with my wonderful roommate, Caroline, who also happens to be the co-host of this podcast. What?
Very convenient.
So yeah, I'm an actor working in New York City, and I also moonlight in operations and facilities for a wonderful off-Broadway theater company. Mm-hmm.
Very fancy. Can't say the name. I love it.
Oh, maybe.
No, don't say the name. I like the mystery.
I'm going to keep it a mystery until you look at my Instagram.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then it's all there.
I'm Caroline. I'm pretty much the same person as Conor. I'm also an actor. We live in the same apartment. I do a lot of babysitting for most of my days, so I'm very connected with my inner child. I usually end up liking Disney more than they do, and I teach them about Disney, so we'll bring a little bit of that energy to this. Yeah,
I know.
Like, fuck us. Like, fuck us. We really wanted to
Well, I guess I should say that, like, sort of where the idea for this podcast came from, because, I mean, like, it's not a super far out there sort of idea to be like, oh, grown-ups talking about Disney. Ugh. But honestly, when I went on Apple Podcasts and I was just, like, scrolling around, there's a lot of Disney podcasts, but there's not anything that's really like for grown-ups that don't have kids. Like,
yeah,
it's so much about like, oh, if you have kids, like what to do in the parks, or like this is the Disney food, and it's like, I want something that covers it all. Like, yeah, let's talk about parks, but like, let's talk about what's happening with Marvel, or like, let's talk about like what's going on with Bob Iger taking a whole bunch of money and Abigail Disney being like, yo, that's not cool on Twitter. Like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what Disney prince is actually secretly gay. Spoiler alert, it's all of them.
That is not true.
I know.
Don't you ever try to take Adam, Flynn, or Prince Naveen away from me.
I'm just trying to,
he's just trying to start a fire.
I'm just trying to start some shit.
And what I was gonna say is too, when I read things online that are Disney related, adults will really come for each other in the comments. And not that we're trying to be here and be snarky, but we like a healthy Disney debate. And there just isn't a podcast out there that's about a little bit more of a debate side, and that kind of thing.
Sort of a chance to like be catty and be sassy with it, because I mean, we've got some thoughts, folks, and I'm sure that you do too.
Honestly, one of my number one thoughts is I would just really like, every time I go to Disney World, Disneyland, I just went to Disneyland last week, actually.
Privileged.
Yes, it's true. Every time I go, someone asks me if I felt strange being there without a kid. And I'm like, you just don't understand. If you went there, you would see that you don't need a kid anywhere near you to have a great time.
Oh, absolutely not.
I will prove that with facts.
I spent my 16th birthday, my 18th birthday, and my 21st birthday.
Oh, I went
Disney
for 21
World,
as well.
And I don't fucking care.
I went for 21 also. It was the first time that I could legally sip some of the Grand Marnier slush that they have in the France Pavilion in Epcot. Yeah. It was memorable.
I had some of the Enchanté Rosé that was one of the house wines at the Be Our Guest restaurant, because I am that fucking extra. Cool. So the way that this podcast is going to work, I guess we should probably talk about like the format of it now.
Do we need to say why we're qualified to do this? Not that like we need to prove it, but like no.
I mean,
it's
spoiler alert, like we're not, but we are. We decided we are. because we love it so much. We're not going to pretend that we're going to be experts on everything. So please, you don't have to lecture us about like, well, you didn't say this and blah 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 blah. Like,
but again, if you have another opinion, we love to hear.
Yeah,
them.
we love opinions. This is really just this is a really big opinion podcast. So
yeah.
We're going to hit you with some facts. We're going to hit you with some history. But if you want to learn about like why Disney did this certain thing, this is not that podcast.
Well, you know what? I think we're going to throw in a healthy amount of facts. We went to liberal arts college.
Yeah, you'll get what you need. We'll let you know what you need to like hear our arguments about the opinions that we have. And hopefully it'll be like a way to inspire you to want to know more about Disney, because I mean, this is one of the huge mega corporations that like runs the planet. Yeah. So there is a lot to know, and I don't think anyone could truly be an expert on either Disney the man or Disney the corporation or Disney the parks. Like, no. Which
just like the thing that
So check yourselves, people. You're not an expert.
And also, like you're saying, Disney owns, for some reason, the thing that reminds me, it's when I remembered that they own ESPN.
They own ESPN.
So, like, a lot of the people in this world who would mock me for my love of Disney, I'm like, you're owned. You've been owned.
Oh, yeah. You watch
your fantasy league? Yeah. Disney owns it. Disney owns it.
They do.
Ugh.
So, the way that this podcast is going to sort of work in terms of, like, you know, structure, because maybe you should know that. We're going to pick some topics to talk about.
Yes, we are.
Wow. Breaking some new ground there. One of us is going to choose something to rant about, and one of us is going to choose something to rave about. So who's going to go first? I think you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay,
this week, I am going to take the rant.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, we're also we're trying to theme this one. So we're sort of in this episode, we're talking about Disney parks, but we're not always going to be Disney parks. These are like Disney parks sort of scandals of the past few years. So she's going to pick one and I'm going to pick one. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that was a good, some podcasts are just focused on the parks.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to cover the whole range of things.
This is parks related, but
we do love the parks, though. I could talk about the parks forever.
We could certainly do that, but we're not. But this one is. So if you're like, oh, this is just another Disney Parks podcast, it's not. Hang on.
We got you. Just stay tuned.
Just take a sip of your beer. And
that's not what I imagined our listener reading. Sipping.
Let's read a beer.
I'm drunk.
Let's just like read a beer every once in a while. Like,
I imagine our listener sipping on chai latte with rum. So This week I am going to take the rant. And my rant is about the fact that on August, I was there for this, I should remember, August 13th, 2017, Disney closed the Great Movie Ride in Disney's Hollywood Studios. Moment of silence. I'm sure everybody listening has been on the ride, but I'm going to give you a brief overview of the ride if you haven't been on it, the history of the ride.
Yeah, not everybody might. Like, we might reach some Cali people.
Well, that's a good place for me to jump off. There was at one point going to be a Great Movie Ride in California also, and in Disneyland Paris, but both times the funding got in the way because it's an expensive ride. And I was just thinking how there's a Hollywood area in California Adventure, and that's where it was going to go, but too expensive. So the attraction was originally going to be called Great Moments at the Movies. And that was at the point when it was being developed for a pavilion for Future World in Epcot. This was when Michael Eisner and Marty Sklar were in charge. And as they started to develop the idea, they realized they could base an entire theme park around this stepping into the movies concept, that they didn't need to just limit it to this pavilion. It began when it was going to be in Epcot as you being able to step into the movies in a very, it was supposed to look like you knew that it wasn't all real. And so that kind of got reimagined when they decided to make an entire park based around the movies. So the Great Movie Ride was one of the original attractions at what was Disney's MGM Studios when it opened on May 1st, 1989. And I looked up the original attractions that were in the park when it opened, and I didn't realize how few things were open on opening day of the park. It was really only
kind of like how it is now.
Yeah.
Empty.
Oh, we're really getting the original experience.
Yeah.
Not much to do.
You thought this was a full day park. Jokes on
it
you.
used
but
to
we
be.
Got all your money.
It used to be. So they count the entrance as an attraction, which I do love. The Hollywood Boulevard.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, they counted that, and it's really awesome. I guess because they
an
brought
attraction.
Yeah,
though?
they have brought this back,
No,
which I enjoy.
I'm sorry. Walking?
No,
is
well, I'll
not
tell you
an
why.
attraction.
No, but I will tell you why. And it went away for a while, but it's back now, very recently. When the park, I think this was happening when the park opened. It was definitely happening in the early 90s when I was a kid and I went. They had all those actors walking around like as characters from classic era Hollywood.
Yeah.
So, it was an immersive experience. Attraction? I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're pushing it with attraction. I'm like, an attraction, I don't understand how you can say, walking down the main Hollywood Boulevard is an attraction. Also,
I do love it, though.
The backlot tour. No, it's not the same thing.
Yes. So the backlot tour, speaking of, was the other one. And then the Great Movie Ride. Shortly thereafter. So that was May 1st. Yeah. By August 25th was the next opening. How much were they charging
a ticket? Do you know?
I don't know. I can look that up in a bit.
We're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because
but
if you're like, $75 and you can ride 3 things, and one of them you have to walk.
And you have to buy stuff.
That's stupid.
But definitely 3 attractions is not enough to, warrant the cost of what I would assume a Disney ticket would be.
Or open a park.
But this is one of my defenses of the Great Movie Ride, which I'll get to in a bit. It's a 22-minute ride. Like, it's a real, legit thing that's going to take up your time in the day. You're walking through the Chinese theater at the beginning, past all these props and costumes, then you get on the ride. It's a solid event.
The B-roll footage as you're standing in the queue.
I loved that.
All of the trailers and stuff. It's great.
Yes. But anyway, the next thing that opened.
I'm with you on.
They opened, so that was May 1st when they opened. August 25th, Indiana Jones arrived.
Great.
So we're moving. And then December was the next ride opening. That was Star Tours. And then later that same December, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the movie set adventure, which... The playground. Yeah.
I mean, the playground was fun before they shut it down, but honestly, they shut it down and, no one really noticed.
I remember it, though.
Yeah, and then you could crawl through a battery. Wow.
I remember the big leaf for some reason. I don't know why.
There were lots of big leaves.
I liked Leaf. And then Muppet Vision was the next to arrive on May 16th, 1991. Quality. So that's like... so good. So good. They were going to... I found out about this. This is great. They were going to make... I forget exactly what the name was going to be, but a Muppets parody ride of the Great Movie Ride.
Oh my God.
Also, in addition to the Great Movie Ride.
How brilliant
it would have been
that?
So great.
Wait. Okay, I'm going to let you keep going, but we need to come back to that because I feel like if part of the reason why the Great Movie Ride shuts down is because of costs of it, I feel like the Muppet version of it is such a great way to do it.
It'd be cheaper.
Because parody law. Because you can get away with so much more. If they just decide to full on let the Muppets attack the Chinese theater and just convert the Great Movie Ride into a more Muppet thing, Muppets tell you the stories of these great movies of cinema history, I feel like that's a great way to save some money.
And you know what? I don't disagree at all. It'd be really good.
That are still there.
And you know what? I think even in when they were coming up with the concept for the Muppets version, maybe it was some of the classic movies, but some of it was just classic stories in general. One of them was going to be them doing Peter Pan, stuff
Amazing.
Like that. But in a way, I feel like people would have freaked even more than they did when they were we're getting rid of the Great Movie Ride for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railroad. I feel like people would have freaked even more about the Muppets. Because it would have been a shell of its former self, but not the same thing. I don't know. I love the Muppets. I would have enjoyed that. So Muppet Vision was May 1991. Then Beauty and the Beast Live on Stage was November 1991. January 1992, Voyage of the Little Mermaid. And Twilight Zone Tower of Terror arrived July 1994. So I feel like that's when with the arrival of the Tower of Terror, it's when it started to become the park that we really know. I thought this was interesting. from 1989 when it opened until 1998, Coke was the sponsor of the Great Movie Ride.
Oh.
I don't remember seeing any Coca-Cola signage, but it must have been there. And then the ride was pretty much sponsorless until 2015 when Turner Classic Movies became the sponsor, and then we got Robert Osborne being the narrator. He's the main TCM film historian. I enjoyed that. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the ride, haven't been on it, as I said before, you walk through this beautiful queue in the replica of Grauman's Chinese Theater from California, Hollywood. You get on these vehicles that are the same vehicles that are used in Ellen's Universe of Energy. They hold a lot of people, slow moving, but they're still controlled. Did we have a human host on Ellen's Universe of Energy like we did?
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you get in with your live host, which, what a beautiful touch that this attraction is led by an actual human.
Yeah.
That already sets it apart. It makes it an experience. It's not just a ride. It's an experience.
Yeah, and I think there really is something to be said for the rides that have actual human hosts. Not like Westworld style hosts. Like,
though soon I'm sure it will be that.
Probably. But, I mean...
Kilimanjaro Safaris.
Kilimanjaro Safaris, the Jungle Cruise, like, it's really sort of extra magical too.
Yeah.
There's almost like a sort of like level of accessibility that gets added by having like some person there who just seems to like know so much and be part of this like magical environment that you're entering by going in like into the movies and everything like that. It sucks that like not all of them are great actors. Because it like when you get a bad host, like
I forgot about
that's the
I think I was going to gloss over like, that in my defense of this ride, but that did happen.
I know. But you know what? As they say, when you're like writing an essay or whatever, like you got to acknowledge the other side. It makes it, but like I totally see where like from one perspective you're like, okay, but having a live host, like so much could go wrong because if you have a bad one, you have a bad one.
Yes,
but
and
when you have a good one, there is nothing like it.
Yes,
nothing like
and
it.
I never had a bad host. The only person, so you ride through the movies with a host who will give you a little overview of the scenes from the classic movies that you're riding through. They're all audio-animatronics, and then you reach either this Western outlaw kind of scene or a 1920s gangster scene.
Yeah, it's like John Wayne, The Searchers, sort of like that's sort of like the movie that you see John Wayne in, and then you go into sort of like a Western town, or you've got like a Al Capone like gangster.
So they'd switch it up to there you go, a little variation. You're not gonna have the same experience every time because we have added in humans. So then your vehicle gets held up by either this gangster or this cowboy outlaw kind of character. Your host gets taken away, and then the vehicle gets controlled by this villain character. And that's where sometimes the acting went wrong for me. I appreciated so much that Disney would let males and females play one time I had a lady gangster.
I found that the lady gangsters are the better gangsters. One
time I had a very, very bad one.
Oh.
Was pretty bad, but you know what, like when they first started doing that, when I like in the early 90s when it was still a relatively new attraction, they got some top-notch actors because they were just in it. They had the accent down. There was one who we were sitting in the front of the vehicle when I was a kid, and he tried to like menace me and scare me, and I was scared.
Yeah.
It was great. So you go through a couple of classic scenes with this new host. You enter an Indiana Jones temple. The outlaw or the gangster really wants the jewel up there, goes up there and touches it when they were specifically told not to by the mysterious voice. They disappear and you get your really nice host back and you finish out the ride. I just made it sound very anticlimactic. It's super awesome.
That's awesome. Wait, wasn't it supposed to be something else instead of Indiana Jones originally?
Well, the other ways that this ride was going to go, this is what fascinates me the most. So, some of the main films that you'll see, the memorable ones, there's Singing in the Rain, Mary Poppins, The Wizard of Oz, Casablanca. We've got a John Wayne. I keep hitting the microphone stand. What else is in there? I always think of the ones that I want to be in there. I'm like, no, that's not actually in there.
Footlight Parade is in there.
Footlight Parade, which that was a big troublemaker when the ride first opened, because the cake that all the dancing Footlight Parade is this like 1930s, like, I don't know why it's in there. So there's all these dancing women piled up on a cake. And when, women are as they prone to do. Yes, that's in very sparkly small outfits. When the ride first opened, the cake that these women were piled on spun around and sprayed water, but it caused huge problems because it would flood the track, it would break all of the time, and it would make them have to stop running the ride.
That is hysterical considering what the Footlight Parade section ended up being.
Horrific.
Which is just
a bunch of scary mannequins just staring at you.
Standing there with like a moving like snowflake,
and they try to make it
scrim.
And they try to make it dark around it so that you can't really tell what else is around.
Like, it's the most boring one. They have to lead
and it's the
with
first
it because
one.
They have to lead with it because they're like, okay, if we start here, we can only go up from here. Otherwise, this thing is going to stick out like a sore thumb.
And boy, do they go up from there, because the ride, as it stood when it closed in 2017, before the final film montage at the end, ended with The Wizard of Oz, which is absolutely spectacular.
It's really incredible.
And there was originally going to be much more of The Wizard of Oz in the ride than there was when it closed. So the part of The Wizard of Oz that's in it now, or was in it, I keep thinking it's still around. It's not.
I know. It's tragic.
So you would roll into Munchkin Land, the Munchkins would sing, and then, spoiler, the Wicked Witch would appear and menace you, and then you would roll on forward.
You're really into people
I said
who
menace. It's the word of the day.
That's the second time you've used it as a verb.
I honestly felt menaced
Caroline,
by...
I'm gonna menace you right now.
I felt menaced also by the alien in the alien part of the ride as well.
Well...
He's scary. Scared. You'll find out as you'll see this podcast. I'm scared of a lot of things.
I don't think the
one that came out of the ceiling was pretty freaking freaky.
Yeah, he's not menacing.
Yes, he is.
Terrifying.
Okay. Like, I thought you were trying to sell me out here.
Menacing is like a pirate. That's menacing. The Wicked Witch. The Wicked Witch. I cannot believe it. She came out and she menaced me. She menaced me so hard. No.
Fine, I'm going to say it again. So you roll into Munchkin Land. The Munchkins sing their song.
We're leaving all of this in.
No, we're not.
Oh, 100%.
You roll into Munchkin Land. The Munchkins sing. The Wicked Witch arrives and threatens you.
Oh!
And you roll on forward to a little scene of Dorothy and the Scarecrow, Tin Man, Lion, and Toto looking up the yellow brick road towards the Emerald City. Wonderful. The audio animatronics look great. It's awesome.
Yeah,
but originally,
really look over her shoulder.
Yes, but I think it looks like Judy. The animatronic of the Wicked Witch of the West. She was updated. I don't know when she was updated, but when that ride closed, she looks fantastic. She looks so realistic, and I found out that she's a Sarcos audio animatronic, which is pretty much the most advanced that we have, and she looked great.
Yeah,
fluid.
Her movement was very similar to like the Greek philosopher on
he's spectacular.
Earth, or
and
like
anybody in the American Adventure ones are pretty great.
Yeah, the American Adventure ones are good. But like the Jack Sparrow ones, like how fluid those ones are on the Pirates of the Caribbean. Like she's got some like. It's smooth. She's fluid, yeah. It's real good.
She's fluid. But there was originally going to be more of The Wizard of Oz in the Great Movie Ride. I think this was going to be the end. So the ride, as it stood, ended with a really great movie montage. Okay. One of the original ideas was going to be this room full of audio animatronics who would gather around you and then all take a bow at the end. And they would include most likely the audio animatronics you saw in the ride, but some additions. And so this room was going to include, when they were planning it, so cool, R2-D2 and C-3PO, Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, which I've always been like, why is Gone with the Wind not in this attraction? Who else? Rocky Balboa, the Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones we already have, Liza Minnelli as Sally Bowles, Shirley Temple, Mickey Mouse. They were all going to gather around you and take a bow.
Oh my god.
Isn't it magical?
Wouldn't that be great? Like, just see like a little, like a life-size
Shirley Temple.
Mickey Mouse, taking a bow.
I was excited about Shirley Temple. I love her.
Shirley Temple.
She was my everything when I was growing up.
So glad that she's not Dorothy. could you imagine if Dorothy at Wizard of Oz was sitting next to Sally Bowles?
Yeah, that would be super
together?
cool. And Shirley Temple too. Like, there's no hard feelings. They'd all be together.
Or she trips Shirley Temple and the animatronic falls.
No, when you start saying this stuff like that, it gives me this weird feeling like Westworld-y. When they have opinions about each other, I just don't like that. I don't like that. There was also going to be a comedy scene, this chaotic world of all this stuff going wrong, and W.C. Fields, Mae West, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, they were all going to be in that room. That would have been fun. Can you
imagine a Charlie Chaplin scene?
Oh, cool.
I could definitely see them being we can't do that because
we don't have the technology for it. Because when I was reading about it and they were describing the scene, I kept saying it'd be chaotic and frenetic.
But
we have the technology now to make that happen. I can imagine this car going wild around us, just this will lead into my point where I do not think that the Great Movie Ride as it was on the day it closed should have stayed that way. I don't think it should have closed. It needed to be updated, and I have some suggestions. But before we get there, just one more thing that I think was awesome in one of the original concepts. There was going to be even more Wizard of Oz in the ride, which I support because I think it's the best part. If you notice, if you've ever been on the ride, when you go through the scene that's Fantasia, it's the least exciting in the ride. You basically go through this dark room. They blow some wind at you. And then there's a screen with Mickey casting a spell, as Sorcerer Mickey from Fantasia. And it's just, you're just like, what? You can always feel that it was a placeholder. And it was, because it was going to be the tornado scene from The Wizard of Oz. And another possibility, there was the reappearance of your host was going to be in the wizard's throne room. So you would get in there, there would be the big scary wizard head, and he'd be like, don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, and your host would return.
Oh, that would have been so cool. Because, also just that your host returns in the most iconic movie of cinematic history. And, that your host, the fact that the Oz head is basically just a film projection onto
it's very
smoke,
meta.
That then, the person controlling the smoke and the projectors and everything.
That's meta. I like it.
I love that.
But I do realize that with all of these, I don't think every single one of these would have been at the same time.
Also, your host can't come back at the end of the ride. Right. And be like, oh, hello, sorry, yes. You were with that gangster the whole time.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. And also, with that amount of material, it would just become the Great Wizard of Oz ride, which I would 100% go on.
Okay with
but
that.
Disney only licensed from MGM, I don't know. Disney only licensed 3 minutes of audio of the movie. So what we have, it's all they paid for, and they weren't going to buy any more. So no throne room, no tornado.
Wow.
So that's a quick overview of the ride and the ride's history. I was actually in Disney's Hollywood Studios, which is what it's now called. It's not MGM Studios anymore.
It's MGM.
It always will be. And I'm sure that now with all of the changes coming to this park with Star Wars and Toy Story, I have heard that Disney's Hollywood Studios is getting scrapped as a title also. And you know what I realized? Walking through the Hollywood area in California Adventure, it has the street has a very similar feel to the main street of Hollywood Studios. And it's kind of the same thing that people are complaining is happening to Hollywood Studios, which is that it's just becoming a mishmash of movies, and that they just each have their own separate area, and the theme is that they're all movies. But it works.
Which, I don't know. I feel like that's such a cop-out. Of course they're all going to be movies. This is Disney. You make movies. Let's think a little bit harder. Let's think about some themes. Let's think about, you're not putting forth the effort to, think about the through line. What actually connects this to this? It's these could make sense together. Epcot. Yeah, sure. Are they going in a very different direction with the pavilions by making them not only the pavilions of the world, but, the cultures that, inspire Disney movies in order to house Disney movies? Sure. But at least there's an extra thought of okay, Frozen kind of makes sense here because it was inspired by Norwegian culture. Or we're going to shove Ratatouille into France because it is inspired by the French culture, French cuisine, and like that sort of thing. Where like now you're looking at movies that have culture at the forefront, where I'm like, okay, that's a really good way of threading these things together. But like, to just be like, oh, we're gonna put this here because it's a movie. No.
Mm-hmm.
You could certainly do like, oh, these are movies that Disney produced that changed history. Hell yeah, I'm there for it. Like The Voyage of the Little Mermaid in Hollywood Studios, 100%. That movie changed Disney. Like it started the Disney Renaissance. Like that makes sense.
Because I was going to say,
oh, are we at differing opinions already?
No, I think your suggestion helped me figure it out. Because what I was going to say is, I think we just need to rewind, and they never should have let go of the classic Hollywood theme. I thought there was a place to go with that. But at the same time, I never really loved, and I know that this is based on the original concept of the Great Movie Ride, which is the reason that the park was made, and we got rid of it. It's what made the park. They were like, no, the movies are a great theme. We could make tons of attractions based on this idea.
It's the literal centerpiece of the park. It's not only the premier attraction / the longest attraction on the park, it's literally at the center of the GD park.
Well, okay, so I've heard people talking about Spaceship Earth, them changing that attraction, and that's the same thing. You can't do that. And they didn't completely overhaul Spaceship Earth, but they updated enough where I was like, it's updated, it's new. We have Judi Dench narrating it. It's great. Like, but I was gonna try to connect this idea to all of the parks, but I don't. Obviously, you can never take down the Tree of Life, but it's tough to be a bug. We could get rid of that.
We could get rid of it. We could add something new. I'm sure, like, I'm all for finding a place for, like, Bug's Life or something like that, because I think Bug's Life is a great movie.
Yeah.
But, like...
And Bugs Land just got demolished in
really
California.
Did. But I just think that there needs to be, like, one of the things that really sets Disney parks above the rest is their willingness to think a little bit harder about what they're putting in. And right now it's just sloppy, because right now
it's just a race.
Yeah, and it's like a space race, and it's like, you know, at one time or another, like, no one's gonna reach the ideal park faster. Mm-hmm. Like, because the nature of these parks is that they're constantly growing, they're constantly evolving and changing. So it's more like race against, like, don't race against Universal, race against yourself. Like, challenge yourself. Mm-hmm. That was the mission of the park, is to, like, challenge itself and, like, develop yourself. Like,
Disney just needs a little self-care. They just need to focus on themselves and stay in their lane.
Which they usually do such a good job. I mean, they're the only company that has really made a business out of creating scarcity of their own products. The entire Disney Vault is just them saying, we're going to create a scarcity of our products so that every single time we release the exact same product, we will make just as much money as the last time it was released. It's brilliant.
Oh, and even on a smaller scale, last year when they released the Alien from Toy Story popcorn buckets, and people would come to the park just to wait online to possibly get the popcorn bucket, you don't have to worry. Like, it's like we're all going crazy for you.
Like, just compete against other Disney parks. Like, I don't know, like, instead of, you know, Disney World competing with Universal Orlando, let Disney World compete with, like, Shanghai or Tokyo. Like, let those parks try and compete with who has the best Disney park.
Right now, Disney World is getting creamed because the technology over there is incredible.
It's insane, and that's what needs to be happening. And the other thing is, like, this is certainly the actor in me talking, but, like, everything has to support story. Everything has to support story, and, like, that's what the parks do. They support these amazing stories that unite all of these people and have all these great themes of, like, family and coming into your own and that sort of thing. And if you're not thinking about those stories, what the hell are you even doing?
I don't think this is the thing. It's not an easy fix, because in my dream scenario, them overhauling this ride, which is really, that's the only scenario that would have worked, is they had to completely overhaul it and work on it. It would probably take years, which I'd be unhappy about also. But it would cost so much money that they would never agree to do it. And I think them overhauling and updating this ride. If you don't have the
money to do it, who does? If Disney doesn't have the money to like completely overhaul a ride, no one has the money.
Right. It's not that they don't have it, but it's the great movie ride getting overhauled and redone is going to bring steadfast fans like you and I, who are going to go no matter what, back to the park. But they're not busy with Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge. That's what's going to rake in the freaking dough. So it's just, they're throwing the money towards
Don't get
that.
me wrong. I'm going to go the F to
yeah,
Star Wars
and that's the thing. It's not like I don't get it. I'm super excited for Galaxy's Edge. It's going to be awesome. It's just, there's just a larger, I'm excited to hear if they're going to rename this park. I'm thinking that the name's not going to have anything to do with Hollywood or movies anymore. I think they're going to completely rework the park, because that's the direction it's going in.
I think it's going to have to be
but what's it going to be?
Like an adventure park or something like
Adventure?
that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like that. I'm like, we've got to figure out what is uniting these parks, or like what are I mean, at this point, we've got to think about what are uniting these individual lands that we keep creating with, Galaxy's Edge, with Toy Story Land, like
and
how
that's why I loved
coexist?
So much when New Fantasyland happened, because it was new and innovative and fresh stuff within a theme that was already there.
And like, see, I think that there is even a case to be made to unite Toy Story Land and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. It's a stretch, but to unite them through the Great Movie Ride, like, I mean, if you're gonna go through movies that changed movie history or something like that, Toy Story changed animation.
What if every land
had
in Hollywood Studios was featured in the Great Movie Ride? So it's an overview of the park, pretty much.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I think it would be brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
I think it would be brilliant. But, like, the Great Movie Ride is what holds that park together. And so, like, I think to remove it is just really going full force into the identity crisis of that park.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm really excited for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railroad. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be really cool. I think the technology involved in it is going to be awesome. But it's not the same. Like, it's not the same, and it's not. It doesn't seem like it's serving the same sort of function that
was one of my main points
had in terms of uniting the park.
Yes, and one of the things that I always loved about it was just its own very unique type of experience. Not only because of the humans on the ride, as we discussed, but it was, as I said, 22 minutes long, and it's not a kiddie dark ride from Fantasyland where you're in it for a minute. And it's kind of like the effects are okay, and then it's over, and you waited a really long time to go on it. And it's not Rock and Roller Coaster where you're going to get your brains blown out of your stomach, like me. It had, like, maybe it's because I was a kid when I fell in love with the ride, but for me, it had some thrills. And I think if they overhauled it, you could make it, like, suspenseful and exciting for adults as well. It was that kind of experience now no longer exists in the parks. Maybe I feel like something like Kilimanjaro Safaris is similar because it's also an experience.
Yeah.
But it's not the same.
And see, like, I don't know. And this where it, like, goes back to, like, exactly what I keep harping about. It's like, what is like, Kilimanjaro Safaris, it's not at the center of the park, but it is at the center of the park.
Yes, right.
Like, that is what this is about.
It's the heartbeat.
Yes, it's about animals, a connection to nature. When they decide to do the little red storyline that gets added in at the end, it's about our responsibility of conserving it. Like, it really highlights all the things. Spaceship Earth, where it's about how we communicate with one another, unites the park in terms of both the World Showcase aspect and the future world, where the future of technology and how we are using technology to create relationships with other things. I mean, I guess I would say in Magic Kingdom, it's sort of beyond its own thing, but like the castle is just sort of like it's the logo. It's like it is the statement of Disney.
And Magic Kingdom doesn't need a cohesive connection because it was made by Walt, it just all just gels and it works. All of these completely unrelated things do work. So that's the thing. That's what gives me hope.
Partner statue is like what unites that
partner. Yeah, but that's the thing. That idea of that there's a fantasy land and then there's an area that's themed for colonial America, but yet those are right next to each other and they work. Makes me be like, Hollywood Studios, pull it together. Find a way to make this work.
And I think it's because that Walt understood when he was building Disneyland and then when he started planning out the Magic Kingdom, he understood that you can have things that are totally different from one another, but it's the through line. Like it's
what you were saying. It's the stories through line.
It's the stories that make sense. Like the story of the Haunted Mansion is not the same as Pirates of the Caribbean, yet it kind of is.
And you know how you can prove that? Because in Disney World, the Haunted Mansion is in Liberty Square, and it's in New Orleans Square in Disneyland, which are two completely differently themed lands, but you could put the same attraction because there's just a uniting through line factor.
Yeah. And that's what we're getting sloppy about. Disney, you gotta do better. You gotta do better. You gotta listen to this podcast, and you gotta fucking take some notes.
People have made the point that Disney, and I would 100% believe that this was one of the main motivating reasons in closing the ride. I didn't like how I said that. I could completely understand.
Wow.
I hated it. I completely understand if this is the reason that Disney wanted to close the ride. It makes sense. Yeah. People say that they're just not interested in quote-unquote advertising other films besides their own, because now they have such a huge catalog of films. So I say this to that. Would I completely love a great movie ride that was all Disney movies? No. But are there a million great movies that are Disney movies? Yeah.
Yeah. Or, like, I mean, I don't know. If you really want to, like, advertise and, like, air your own fucking property out, like, show us the Disney movies that are Disney movies that we didn't know. Like, show us our Touchstone features. Like, let's see those show up in places. Like, let's oh my god!
It's just one of the great things about Disney that's changing. Used to be that you could 100% go for your Disney themed experience, but then experience other things. Like the World Showcase without Disney characters was just about other countries. It wasn't about connecting a Disney property to another country. Yeah. Now it is. So I understand where if we're going by that model. Yes, I see. The great movie ride as it stood has to go. It just I used to think it was more factual where I'm like, here are the legitimate reasons why it never could have gone away because now this park has no through line, blah, blah, blah. But it makes me sad because I completely see it through Disney's eyes, which I feel like are getting a little bit cynical. And, this is my favorite. People are trying to blame the ride closing on millennials because they're like, millennials, just like we're killing everything else, are killing movie going. Movie going isn't the glamorous thing that it used to be.
I am sorry, millennials are the reason that the AMC A-list exists.
But they're saying not only is the movie going experience not what it used to be, but millennials don't have any interest in these old classic movies anymore. They don't know what they are. And I'm just
they've clearly not been to NYU film.
So. I'm one, yes. Like, but I'm also just super insulted by that because I started going on the ride when I was really young and it made me want to watch Singing in the Rain. I'd never seen Singing in the Rain and I watched it. I got it out of the library because I was like, it's in the great movie ride. I'm going to watch it. And now it's one of my favorite movies.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing Singing in the Rain when I was little and then going on the ride and seeing Singing in the Rain. And I was like, oh my God, the ride knows Singing in the Rain too? No one else in elementary school knows?
That's so funny. I felt like that about that ride too, where I was like, wow, it's like this ride gets me. Like, this is the stuff I like.
Yeah.
So I guess there's one of my points that I was going to make was I had all of these suggestions for movies that they could have put in it when they overhauled it with
Titanic.
with all these beautiful new audio-animatronics.
I just want Kate Winslet.
Titanic was going to be one of them, but now I see the more I've thought about it, the more that it was just never going to happen. And so, wow, I think I don't want it to have gone in any way, shape, or form, but I'm like,
Did
I
you
also
just talk yourself out of your rant?
But
wow,
I also...
first episode, and she's already failing at the job.
But I also, because if we're thinking about riding through great Disney movies, I love the concept we were talking about of the great movie ride being an overview of the park. Of riding through Toy Story, riding through Star Wars. First of all, that's another thing that should be in the great movie ride. Excuse me. But I don't want to ride through great Disney movies because I already do. Like, there's already the Little Mermaid ride. That's one of Disney's great movies. I already can ride through it. And I don't want those kind of audio animatronics, even though for that ride, they're great. I want ones that look like real people. I want as close to the experience of being in the movie as I can have.
It's about the actors.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Rest in peace. Great movie ride.
Great movie ride.
It's a real tragic loss.
With it, you took that entire park.
I mean, you really did. Like, that is what truly made me believe Hollywood Studios is dead. Like, if you take the heart out of it, it doesn't exist anymore.
That's my rant, and now it's not even a rant anymore. I'm confused and sad.
I
understand.
I think it's still a rant.
It's a rant in that it shouldn't have happened, but now I'm like, it was gonna happen.
It's a rant in that it's a shame that Disney let it get to the point where it was inevitable. Mm-hmm. There were points along the way that they could have at any time stepped in and been like, no, we're going to save this. We're going to close this for like a pretty big refurbishment. Back when they were still like willing to take risks on the rides that they do.
Ooh, that's a hot take.
That's a hot take. That is a hot take. That is fresh out of the oven. You're welcome.
The tea is scalding.
The tea is scalding, and sorry you burnt your tongue. Yeah. Okay. What a rant.
What a downer.
So since Caroline had the rant, that means that I have the rave. And my rave is, I'm gonna, sorry. My brain just like completely died on me.
It's so annoying when we're doing this. I'm like, I'm eloquent.
I promise.
I get this microphone,
I have typed notes and a printed out Variety article with a picture. Like, Christ, I'm prepared for this. So my rave is about, I wanted to choose one of the bigger scandals of the last couple of years. And it has to do with a certain ride that is about certain types of people who sail in ships and have guns
and say yo ho
like yo ho.
Yeah, that's how you call me.
My rave is about the recent change that they made to Pirates of the Caribbean, where they removed the bride auction scene. And they changed the "We Want the Redhead" sequence that was so famous. This has been a real hot button of contention. So I'm going to start with a brief history of the attraction. Just so we sort of like, have our facts before we go full-fledged on why this was the best decision they could have made. So Pirates of the Caribbean opened in Disneyland on March 18th, 1967. It was the last attraction that Walt himself oversaw the design and construction of before his death, which he died 3 months before the attraction officially opened. It's a real tragedy. It's one of the rides that you can, if you watch like The Wonderful World of Disney, he's advertising it, and he's like going through the animatronics workshops as he has the different artists working on like sculpting them.
I wish we could play the audio of one of those. Just hearing him talk about it is so endearing.
Yeah.
Oh no, he disagrees.
Well, until like he gets to like, you know, one of the female people working there, and he's like, well, what do you think of this? And she's like, oh, I just think it's the best. And I'm like, you're building a bride auction sequence.
Yeah, but
I am so sorry you can't say what you actually feel.
It didn't even register in my brain till a short while ago, I've got to say.
Are we brainwashed?
Yes.
Christ.
Yes. It did not even occur to me as something like, this is unfortunate.
I know. It was poor and unfortunate.
Like us.
Yep, just like my life. Okay, so it was originally imagined as a walk-through wax museum. I know. But later, the idea to bring in a water and boat system from It's a Small World was adopted. And then they added, in the Disneyland version, the Blue Bayou restaurant as part of it, which, like...
Just went by it last week. Amazing. And another example of that scene when you're going past the Blue Bayou, you haven't entered the pirates part necessarily. And there's, like, an old man rocking on his porch. It's completely New Orleans, like, 1940s almost. And it still works. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I regrettably have not been, so I have not been able to indulge.
I've heard that the Blue Bayou restaurant itself is not very good, though. I hope it's wrong. So, someone want to take me? Like, prove me wrong.
Prove me wrong. Give me tickets. Prove me wrong. There are 5 iterations of the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction. There's Disneyland California.
With 2 drops. Much to my chagrin.
Much to my hell yeah. Disneyland California, Disneyland Paris, Tokyo Disneyland, Walt Disney World in the Magic Kingdom, and then Shanghai Disneyland's...
Slay my life. Go YouTube that version immediately.
Go YouTube that version.
You're gonna cry. It's so good.
It's so good. It's so different, but it's so good. Which sort of kind of leads me into this. Okay, so let's talk about the change that they did. So in June of 2017, Disney announced that they would be closing both the Disneyland California and Magic Kingdom Pirates attractions for refurbishment. And part of that refurbishment included a new auction scene. So previously, the scene depicted pirates who stormed the village of Puerto Dorado, auctioning off women to other pirates and other just men. So these were women who lived in that port, who they gathered from their homes,
tied them up,
and brought them to auction. Among the women depicted in that scene is a tall red-headed woman who, over the life of the ride, has become a fan favorite, along with the line of dialogue that's spoken by the men in the crowd, "We want the redhead."
And what he says something else to her, like, "Show us your something side."
Oh yeah. That's to.
Oh, that's someone else.
That's to the.
No, don't say it.
That's to our plus size friend, where he says, "Show us your larder side."
Yep, there.
And then she like bends over and
oh
like
my gosh,
shows off her ass underneath her like 5 layers of petticoat because
very nice.
Family first. Wow. So, the new scene...
You got me on that one.
So the new scene that they added would depict villagers lined up with their valuables, so actual property, not women, to be surrendered for auction. The banner that used to read "Auction, take a wench for a bride" would be revised to read "Auction, surrender your loot." Your spelled Y-E-R, of course.
Naturally.
And finally, the red-headed woman would be recast as a pirate herself, overseeing the surrender of the valuables, complete with a rifle and a feathered hat.
Mm-hmm.
And the "We wants the redhead" dialogue would be removed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where we're coming from with my rave about why I think this is good. So there are a lot of haters out there who are like, this isn't Walt's vision of the ride. This isn't what it's supposed to be. Like, blah, 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 blah. Why do they have to be PC and everything like that? Let me tell you, I spent so much time trying to find exactly what Walt's vision of the ride is. Spoiler alert, you can't find him say what his vision of the ride is. The best that we have is let me find exactly what I said. Is a band of pirates and their troubles and exploits. Another kind of like part of the vision is to take the visitor back in time. And then another vision for it is that it would be dark and comedic. That's the extent that I have found for what his plan for that ride would be. Outside of like, that was going to be a wax museum and stuff like that.
And auctioning off women is so comedic.
So funny.
So funny.
So funny.
Love it.
So to all you people who are like, I know what the original vision of the ride is because I talked with Walt myself. Please send me audio clips of that recording, because even when I'm watching him introduce this thing on Wonderful World of Disney, he's sort of all over the place as well. In like, it's this, but also this, and like this, and it's a pretty remarkable ride in that it has sort of like revolutionized the kind of storytelling that takes place in a ride for being something that is so fluid in terms of like what you're actually seeing and what story is actually being told.
And could you also imagine someone saying about anything in life, can we maintain the vision of a white man from the 1960s? Like, sometimes that's not going to be a good idea. And I love Walt, but I can still say that.
You certainly can. And
I would like to hope if he was around now that he would be keeping up with the times.
Well, and that leads me to my first argument. So there is a history, like it or not, that has been established in the parks to alter and modify attractions. Walt's overarching vision of the entire park is that Disneyland, this is a quote, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. So if we're thinking of that, end quote. So if we're thinking of that in terms of like, let's equate that to the Constitution of the United States. The Constitution of the United States, if you watch the RBG documentary, she tells you that when she as a judge is ruling on legislation, the Constitution has to prevail. So, like, if there is a piece of legislation that is passed that directly rebuts the Constitution, it is the obligation of the court to uphold the Constitution and not the new piece of legislation. And I feel so strongly that Walt's idea that the park is never finished, that the park should continue to grow and change with new ideas, new imagination, and with the times, that is the Constitution of Disney parks. And that has to win. Even when you have people who are like, but the original idea for the ride and blah, 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 blah. Disneyland is never finished. If we need to make a change to the ride that makes it so that it's more contextually accessible to a generation, that has to win.
Also, Walt's whole idea about Disneyland in the first place was creating a new and fresh and revolutionary take on family entertainment, because family entertainment wasn't really a thing. It was the parents would sit by while the kids went on the rides.
And this was everyone's participating.
Yes, he was always somebody who was like, what's new, what's up to date. That was his MO.
And I'm sorry, if we're talking about full family participation here, and I'm sitting next to my like 5-year-old kid on a ride going by the bride auction scene, I'm praying to God that my child doesn't ask me what that scene was about when I get off the ride.
And I would consider myself a feminist, pretty, aware, woke even person. And I just completely saw that scene as a child and just, like, took it in, and, like, that was just a thing in my mind. That was a thing that happened.
Yeah. And, I mean, here's the thing, is it doesn't have to be. We can still show that pirates are ruthless, dehumanizing people in a family setting without that. Like, these are the pirates of Disneyland. These are not the pirates that, like, actually, like, we're not going to get a full historical session here in the Magic Kingdom or in Disneyland Park. Let's be real. That was never going to happen.
Yes, it's Disneyland is based on fantasy, you guys. Like,
yeah,
it's fine. If we want to take the for the people out there who are like, but, you know, that's what happened back in the days of the pirates. Listen to me right now. If you want to go that way, then the ride is going to become completely inappropriate for children, because pirates did a whole heck of a lot more than that. And also, all of the females depicted in this ride should have armpit hair. They should look completely unkempt. And
there should be more female pirates, because female pirates existed.
I don't even know if they did, but they did. They did?
They did.
Yeah,
the character, I forget her name, who's in Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, who is the Asian pirate lord, like the female pirate lord, is based on an actual pirate. An actual female pirate who commanded this, like, pirate army that... Yes. Or pirate navy or pirate fleet or whatever the fuck.
And I also just love when people want to say, but that's, you know, that's historically accurate. When... in the Disney World version, for example, we go through the mist with a tentacle-faced Davy Jones?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. I'm sort of getting ahead of myself a little bit there. But, so the next sort of, like, thing that I want to say about it. So there is a Variety article from 2017 that was announcing the removal of the women auction, the bride auction. And it was Marty Sklar, who he retired as the head of Imagineering in 2009, and he worked very closely with Walt. And he even said that the changes like this are part of Walt's vision for the park. And he said, quote, "The Imagineers are simply reflecting what Walt started the day Disneyland opened, making changes that create exciting new experiences for our guests. I can't think of a single attraction that has not been enhanced and improved, some over and over again. Change is a tradition at Disneyland that today's Imagineers practice," end quote. So about the Pirates changes, he said that, quote, "Pirates of the Caribbean has always represented great Disney park storytelling and has set the standard for the theme park industry for half a century, but it's a story you can continue to add fun to with great characters and new performances. That's what the Imagineers have done with this new auction scene. It's like a theater show with a new act." So, I mean, if we're approaching it from that sort of place of, like, it's a new theatrical sort of experience, like, I don't really see how to argue against that. So each version of this particular attraction, Anaheim, Paris, Shanghai, Tokyo, and Disney World, follow the same sort of preserved vision of the attraction, but I would say that they go about it differently in their execution. So there's already a sort of history of change. There's already sort of, like, history of variance in this ride. So to say that this ride hasn't been changed or shouldn't be changed is already moot, because the fact that it's being introduced in these different parks, there are logistical changes that have to be made, among other things. So change is going to happen. And as soon as the gates are open to that, like, the gates are open. Most have minor alterations for those, like the loading area and the queues and the facades and the use of the Blue Bayou restaurant. So
love it.
So, like, the Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom queue is so different from the Disneyland one. There's no, like, the theming of New Orleans versus, like, your full on, like, Caribbean, like,
the queue
Spanish.
For the Disneyland one, you're just, like, you're winding your way into what looks like a mansion. My parents thought that it was the Haunted Mansion, and I was like, this is Pirates.
Yeah. And in Disney World, in the Magic Kingdom, it's like you're going into a Spanish, like, fort. So it's very different in that respect. And then there are other, like, major changes, like Shanghai, where they completely reimagined what the entire thing is like. So they use actually like really, really advanced not motion capture, like projection mapping and gigantic screens integrated with physical sets to tell a completely different story that exists more in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie franchise. And
what are the vehicles?
They're boats.
They are?
Yeah, they're boats, just like that.
Oh, cool.
So that stays, but it's a completely different story that's being told. But it's so good. It's so good and accepted, and that's all this to say. These modifications, they've been widely accepted. People already have seen them, and the variances and the different like versions of this, and they work. And it's because Pirates of the Caribbean as a ride, as a concept, is a starting point. It's not the end. The movie franchise came out of the ride because the idea was already there. And then we can add that back in.
And yet we didn't hear people complain when they added in Jack Sparrow. That was fine.
Did. People
all right,
complain.
Fine. Then that comforts me a little.
People complain over everything.
All right, good.
But,
as long as it's not just about the, the bride auction, when it's all good. Fine.
Yeah, but there were actually other changes that had happened in Pirates of the Caribbean prior to Jack Sparrow. So previously, there were the women who were in the fort were being pursued and chased by the pirates, and there was the waterboarding scene with the mayor where he's being waterboarded.
That's still in Disneyland.
Yeah.
It's still there.
But those things have been changed. So now instead of the pirates like chasing to presumably, assault these women, they are now chasing the pirates. So they've leaned more into the comedy of it to make it lighter, to make it more accessible for families who are in the park, because it was really grappling the dark and comedic sort of realm, and a lot of the darkness was starting to show its true colors as, we as a society have shifted our sort of view of, piracy, of sexual assault in the Me Too movement and stuff like as we have as a society have sort of progressed in our thinking of like what is like a civil, like a human rights violation, the darkness of the ride started showing itself more, and so they've had to sort of counteract it with more of the comedy in order to preserve the balance of the darkness and the comedy. And the bride auction is a sequence that over time, the darkness of it has really, really popped out in a way that is very glaring and very kind of stares you in the face as you ride that ride, where it doesn't balance between dark and comedic anymore. It's just dark. And when that happens, they've got to find a way to bring it back to the comedy.
How can someone sit here and say, I really need an auction of women in my theme park experience, and I'm mad if I don't get it?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah,
you can. Just don't go to Westworld then.
Yeah. I get the traditionalist people, but the tradition at Disneyland, at Disney parks, is change. It's change and innovation and accommodating the people. You're not going to get people coming to the parks when they're confronted with that sort of thing. I'm
also just like, I'm here on vacation to like have fun, keep it maybe a little light. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so if you want to see something that's completely Walt made how he wanted it, one, go to the Carousel of Progress, and they introduce it as, here it is, just as it was. And yet, even that has been slightly updated because the future scene became outdated. We had surpassed the technology presented in the future scene, so they made a couple of tweaks so that what they're doing in the future is maybe a little bit beyond what we have now.
Yeah.
So even that, which is preserved so you can see exactly what Walt did, has been updated, because otherwise it's worse than a museum piece. It's not even that. It's just irrelevant.
Yeah. And I really think that the arguments that you can't really argue with for the change of Pirates is that, one, change is tradition in Disney parks. Two, if the vision of the ride is to be both dark and comedic, and the darkness starts outweighing the comedy, you've got to lighten it somehow. The auction sequence still works when they're auctioning loot over women, but the darkness of it has really been corrected as that scene has not aged well. I'm sure back when the park opened, where we as a society honestly weren't really approaching those sorts of subjects head on.
It was funny.
It was funny to people. It's not funny anymore. And now it just sort of sticks out. So you've got to find a way to lighten it up so it fits with the rest of the ride. So that's like my number 2. And then my number 3 is it's for families. And if there are parents who are going onto that ride and they are keeping it into themselves of like a feeling of, oh my God, how am I going to talk to my kid about this if they ask me? If that weight has been lightened off of, like, lessened,
why not?
By doing this at the expense of some older person who's like, but the tradition of the ride, it's worth it. It's worth it.
And if you're just going on about the tradition of the ride, you better be going on Carousel of Progress every day to support what Walt made if it's that important to you.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're all about the tradition of Pirates of the Caribbean, you wouldn't be on this ride anymore because it has changed multiple times over history.
And also, they made a great character. Red is awesome.
Red's awesome.
I just passed by a girl when I was in the parks last week dressed up like her.
Yeah.
This is what we like to see. This is good.
And I mean,
I bought the ornament of her. She looks awesome. Come on.
That's going to be on our Christmas tree.
Oh, yes, it is.
But, yeah, it's just the whole argument of, like, politically correct. I don't think that politically correct is a derogatory term in this aspect. It's not politically correct so much as it is accessible and family friendly.
Yes, I like that.
And if the park isn't family friendly, then what's
it? Left?
Like, so yeah, that's my rave. I think that they made a really, really good choice for Pirates of the Caribbean, especially moving forward for the future of the ride, to say that, hey, we acknowledge that there are some problems in this ride. We're keeping our eye out on when it gives me some hope in a way that, like, you know, with a great movie ride where they're just like, scrap it. Like, this is one where they're like, okay.
We're always doing a little bit of maintenance so we can never fall too far behind, like the great movie ride.
This one makes me feel a little bit better that they're like, hey, we know that there are some things that have some problems and we're keeping an eye on it to make sure that we can fix them before those problems get too bad.
And not for nothing, our generation is going to be the one bringing our kids soon.
Yeah.
I don't want to have that conversation, so keep me coming to the park because I went as a kid and I want to bring my kids. So
exactly.
Keep me happy. It's a good idea.
And also, our generation are becoming the Imagineers of tomorrow. So we get to decide what is going to be in those parks and what's not, because we are the people who are supplying the imagination that powers these parks. So it's up to us. And if we say we don't want this, then we don't want it. And if we lose some like ultra traditionalist people, they actually aren't honoring the tradition of Walt. So
we don't want them. And
that's your hot tea for this time. You know. So I mean, don't let it scorch your throat on the way down. I've got some thoughts, folks. I've got the thoughts. And, you know, I was going to say come for me, but please don't. I don't
No.
Go for it.
Don't.
Great. So, that's it. That's all I got. You have anything else you want to say about Pirates? Anything else you want to say about Great Movie Ride?
No, I will say I was thinking about Red. She's called Red now. Yes. I was thinking about Red when I wrote
2 Ds.
Yes, because, I was going to say it's
we're
because
badass.
she's very modern.
Yeah.
When I passed by her when I wrote it a week ago, she looks fresh as hell in Disney World. for some reason, I don't know if they kept some of the old Audio-Animatronic Disneyland. She was looking a little janky, like something was wrong with her face.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. She got a little beat up. There we go. We're going for realism. She probably got the crap beat out of her.
Maybe that's the compromise for our traditionalist friends here.
No, but then she needs to have armpit hair down to her knees.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Great. So that concludes this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you will tune in next time. In the meantime, you can follow us on social media. On Facebook, we are at Poor Unfortunate Podcast. Twitter, we are at Unfortunate Pod. We're on Instagram at Poor Unfortunate Podcast.
So leave your... I think what we'll probably start doing is maybe we'll put up...
some like show notes.
Yeah, and we'll put up... I think I'll put up an Instagram post per episode. So that's where you can sound off on your opinions on what we talked about.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Be kind and be respectful to each other. Like, yes, we're bitchy. Yes, we've got thoughts. Yes, we've got some hot tea. But remember,
have courage and post, but be kind.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, just make sure to be kind to one another because honestly, we're all in this because we just love it so much. So yeah, if you liked what you heard, please, rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about us because right now we're starting out and we're trying to get other people on board with us.
And tell us what you want us to talk about. What do you want to hear about?
We might listen to you.
I think we will at some point.
Yeah.
The Disney universe is endless.
All right. So thanks everybody. Beluga Sabruga bitches. I said it.